Good morning. Welcome to another episode Eye Level Podcast. Today again with Christian Dobrick. Today is a special episode because we will discuss on a specific topic, and the specific topic is named Shame and Dualism. We both prepared questions and will both lead the discussion, so we will have a lively exchange. Welcome, Christian. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm glad to be here, and I'm really excited. And I hope that the way our German English is acceptable for our listeners. So I'm really curious about it.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Why are you so attached to these two topics, shame and dualism?
I think because I experienced in my lifetime, I experienced a lot of situations where I had the feeling that I'm in shame. So to make this clear for our listeners, I have been born with a disability. My half of my left arm is missing since I was born. So when you experience a lot of bullying and stuff like that, when people get really rough with you and try to discriminate against you, you are in a situation where you feel shame and you feel ashamed of yourself. And I think that on the one hand, shame is something really powerful, but in a negative way. But on the other hand, it also can drive you forward a bit, I think. So just for your self growth, I think.
And dualism?
I'm really fascinated by this concept of dualism because I think you can experience and see it everywhere in our world. And me as a football coach, every time I think about the game, or a soccer coach in the USA, I think about the game, and I always have those dualisms like order and chaos, or possession or out of possession, and it's something that's about balance and to balance a game out. And I think you have this concept all over the world, like darkness and light, and yeah, basically this is what is fascinating about it. You have a lot of things that have one side and the other side, and you are in between.
And how did you get to know it first? How did you really oh, what's going on here? Why is always light and shadow? Why is it both here?
I realized in my personal life, so as a human, I realized that in my with my friends and with my family, I always had the feeling that things that pushed me down or pushed me back had in the long run something really good for my life. So for example, I lost, or I left my hometown club, my Bauer club, and I was really sad about it. And I had the feeling, wow, it will be never like this again. And then I came to my next club, to Holstein Kiel, and I realized in the long run, but just in the long run, that this darkness I had in these moments where I felt sad and really was not comfortable about myself, I learned a lot. And that's my personal my personal life, basically. And on the football pitch, I realized it first as I spoke to Tim Walter, as he were coach at Holstein Kiel. And his approach was always to create chaos on the pitch. Like, make a lot of runs, pass and move, and try to disorganize the opponent's structure. And it was the same concept of possession-based football, like Barcelona or Ajax Amsterdam or Pep Guardiola is practicing it, but it was the other side of the coin. Pep Guardiola is somebody who is really about order and about possession, and Tim is somebody who is really about chaos and possession, and both approaches worked and will work in future. So it was really fascinating to realize that for me as a soccer coach.
Yeah, interesting. How does that now lead to your own philosophy, and how do you approach these dualisms in your own football as a coach?
I try to be aware of it, basically. So I try to observe the game and think about this concept. And I try to find out when I watch an opponent, like is he more about chaos or is he more about structure? And if I or order is the other side of the coin. And if I know if he is about order or if he is about chaos, I can react to it and design my own approach to react to this, and also be active. So my own approach is at first something that's really about myself and my game. So I really love to have control, but it's not about order. So control can also be when like controlled chaos. You can control somebody with chaos, and I love to have control with my teams on the pitch. But I think if you are aware of it and you can observe it, it's really powerful to win the game in the end, because okay, they're about chaos. Maybe I need a bit order to counter it or whatever. So you have a lot of possibilities to think about the game a lot deeper than before if you have these dualisms.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because what my time at Red Bull Leipzig, basically the slogan was, we want to control the chaos. And one ingredient of this slogan was, for example, that the structure itself, the net, like a spider net around the ball, has to be that good that you win more or less every second ball. So basically that your distances from player to player are so good organized and they're moving all together in a swarm. So when, for example, long ball is played, and then you are always better organized to win the second ball because your distances are better. So that's also a big part of controlling the chaos, and is also a big part of this pressing or transitioning philosophy at Leipzig.
Right. I think there are a lot of similarities between it. And like you said, I think it's also a bit about the contrast, So when you don't get the contrast of the dualities, you will never know which is your philosophy. If you always are stuck with one thing, like Barcelona, like they are about order and structure and possession, but they never experience the contrast. And if you like to see what football or soccer can, it's so diverse. There are so many things you can experience and you can learn. If you don't experience the contrast between these two extremes, I think you lose something about yourself as a coach and your understanding of the game. So you're like in Leipzig, did they spoke about things like order, or was it more like on the base of football? Was it like they have the duality and they'll be aware of it, or just talking about the detail?
Oh, it was interesting because the order thing and the thing of everything has to be very clear organized was also structured the same in the academy, like the organization. Like the organization was very, very well organized in case of structure and order, and that there were certain rules to follow, very clear for the players who were, for example, living there. So the thing what you wanted to see on the pitch, like the framework was also given in the academy, for example, but then the chaos, the freedom itself, the creativity was demanded to come from the players, and then was developed in training sessions to get them inside this, I will call it framework, to give them then this freedom and this creativity to develop chances to create moments who are special. So that was basically how it worked there.
Yeah, interesting. I think it's a bit like if you like to truly understand, you need this contrast, and maybe this is the contrast beside the pitch and on the pitch, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting, the dualism in football. For example, we went to an Easter tournament in my second season there with the 17s, and we played against Portuguese teams. It was in the near of Porto, and the Portuguese teams had a complete different approach of football. So they were definitely possession based, but still had moments, because they were like, I remember, I think it was Sporting Braga, who were really, really good at having the ball, but when we ever stepped forward and tried to defend forward, they looked for the space and like used it like dreadful. So they were a really, really tough team. And in the end, I think they lost to Copenhagen, but they played by far what I saw in this tournament, the best soccer and the best football, also addressing the temperatures. Like, for example, this year I was with a team in a tournament in Brazil with my current club, and the temperatures were so high. So I got a lot of respect now for how Germany went to become World Cup winner in Brazil, because it's a big home advantage to see like how you deal with the temperatures, and to win against Brazil in Brazil with these temperatures is, I think, a big thing. So there are things you need to take in account who will influence dualism in a big side, because temperature can bring your idea of football down or bring it up, for example, and play in your cards or play in the opponent's cards. So I'm really into that topic, that different approaches and different ideas will always lead to different results and will always mirror each other. But there's also this moment when you see, for example, the Dutch academies, they are so like stubborn. Like, I don't want to generalize, but what I feel about their playing style is they will always play the same way. For example, okay, Eindhoven, now they brought in with Roger Schmidt a German coach who might bring another style to this country, but normally they have a style which is pretty much based on possession, and they develop through the whole academies this style, and sometimes also with a systematic of 4-3-3, for example. And they have big success with small citizens and a lot of top players who come out of that. Because they have one system everybody believes in. And if there's for example, if there's a German dude coming and telling, oh, we did it different in Germany, they would say, okay, thank you, we will listen, but we will stay with our idea. So that's also a big strength. And I experienced the same in Portugal. It's like they asked maybe 2-3 questions about the playing style at Leipzig, but then they just said, okay, we do it like we did it the last 10 years, because we brought up all these great players. And I think they have a different approach and a different culture. And I think that also leads to an amount of success.
Right. But I think it's quite interesting to see that, because you can, on the one hand, you can say it's a bit like Apple. So you have your closed system in the Netherlands, and there is no other device that is capable of coming into the system, you know. Like when you try to implement something in an Apple device, it's not possible because it's a closed system. I think the Dutch football is obviously a bit like that, because they have their own trademark, their own style, and there is no way of getting out of that. I think when you have been teach soccer in the Netherlands, and obviously Apple is really successful. And I think sometimes the German football is a bit more like Windows, you know, you can plug in everything and it possibly works or it will not, but you can try. And I think in the end, it's interesting because it's so different, but both approaches can work.
Yeah, for sure. I think as a coach, it's in the end the most successful way might be combining these ideas, like from when we speak about dualism, to combines maybe the transition aspect with the possession aspect. What, for example, some coaches try to combine, if you see, for example, Marco Rose at Gladbach, and also other coaches in the first Bundesliga. But then this combining has to be on a really, like, it's on the edge. It's like a really balancing thing. So it's a bit like the whole world tries to get in balance back in. So after we basically bankrupt the world and the earth with just putting out all the coal and like all these treasures inside the earth, by exploiting the earth and still doing that, the earth will bring us back in balance. And I don't know if we will survive this. So basically, I think the dualism in the world is that when we use the world like it is right now, when we use the earth and do not have a relationship to the earth, what is on a respectful basis for example, not exploiting animals or nature or the tropic rainforest, for example, then we might not survive it, because the earth has to get in balance back. And if that means that we have a lot of tornadoes and a lot of flooding, that maybe the human beings will not survive it. So what I think in the balance of football again spoken is that when we speak about this balance, sometimes when you're on the one extremity, you go to the other. So for example, Roger Schmidt, he played at Paderborn, he played a possession-based style, but he was considered a good coach as a person, so he was brought to Salzburg. And at Salzburg, he needed some time, and then he went from this side to this side. And now with the experience of China, and maybe now with Netherlands, with Eindhoven, he might go, I don't know, but we will see in the television basically where he goes now. And if he is now combining the elements and is finding the balance for himself and maybe also an authentic self. And I think with experiencing very extreme situations, for example, when we can speak about shame afterwards, but when you have this really crazy and extreme situations in soccer, for example, you go to a Red Bull philosophy, or you go to a Dutch influence, or to Portuguese, and you have this extreme opinions and convictions about this topic of development or style, then you will get to know yourself, because then you have to balance this extremity for yourself and say, okay, I will implement this and this, but not this and this. And then you come into the middle. The other thing, for example, Robert Klaus, I worked with in Leipzig, he's now coach of Nuremberg. And we will see how he adjusts this Red Bull idea, because he was raised up in the whole system, how he will address this idea and the topic of the philosophy in this traditional club with players who might not fit 100%. And also we saw that with Zorniger at Stuttgart, who was fired very early with his very, very clear and extreme idea. So we will see how everybody finds this balance in the earth, in the world of football.
Yeah, I think this concept of balance is in general really interesting, because like you said, it's something that happens in I think the universe itself, in the environment. And I think it's really fascinating when you think about that. Sometimes the extremities try to balance each other out time for time. So when you observe the universe, like there's a lot of darkness and a lot of light, and there's a lot of things and a lot of space, so to say it simply. And I think that this balancing out process is something that's something physical, that's just a physical law. Like the balance is always try to achieve itself for the sake of balance. So it's something that happens in the universe, it's something that happens in our world, and it's something that happens in our mind too. So everybody knows when you have something really hard and something happens to you that's really hard for yourself in your life, and you're down, you're really down, you wish like dying, and you recover from that. That's the recovery is sometimes even more beautiful than your status before. Like you lost somebody you loved, or you maybe you have a broken heart or something because you got rejected or something, and in future you see yourself balancing it out and become to a new beauty. And I think this concept also in football, and to speak about that again, is mostly the same. Every time when I try to create order in my own structure, it's for the sake of creating chaos in the opponent's structure. Like when you play a pass in a specific space and they play a simple layoff pass, it's just about disorganizing the opponent and to organize yourself. Like Pep Guardiola said, when you play a lot of passes, you organize yourself and disorganize the opponent. So, and it's again about this balance, you know. And I think I'm really curious about the idea of or maybe the thought that Roger Schmidt could balance the ideas of Red Bull and the possession-based Netherlands football out, because it would be so incredible interesting to watch. I think when you have something that's possible. Maybe, but maybe I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's the strength of the extremities that they are so extreme. It's also possible. Maybe the balance isn't powerful on the pitch because it doesn't work, like you said. It's something it's hard to achieve, and maybe it's not that powerful. Maybe you need this ideology on the pitch, you know?
Yeah, I think the problem is when it comes to hard times, as you said, like for example, a coach, let's for example take Guardiola as an example. Guardiola is really convicted of his style of play. Like he will die for this philosophy, and that's why everybody admires him, because he will stay with this style until his last day, basically. And even though it might kick him out of the semi-final again, he will stay with it. And so that's something where you really feel, okay, that's his personality. He might, because he was raised up in the La Masia, he played for the club. He might have, like, that might become himself. And this is maybe his truly self, if you can, we can't judge that, but it might be. And so he finds himself, but also, like, he also does little adjustments. But now let's think about the coach who's maybe not that settled, not that clear, not that convicted, and he tries to balance the game. And now, for example, he's losing 3 matches in a row, and he's feeling the pressure of the president, of the sporting director, whatever. And then he tried to play out from the back, for example, the last 3 games, and he lost the first 3 games. And then he's in front of this decision to say, okay, next game, my goalkeeper already struggled a bit. Do I now want to play more long balls to create more, for example, chaos? And maybe I want to control this chaos, or do I stay with my structured build up from the back, where I exactly know where my good players are and where I want to go on my target areas? So basically, he has to do a big decision in this moment. And if he's not that experienced, for example, or does not have the inner strength to say, okay, that's my way, and I know that it works, I'm really convinced, he might go to the other side, and then he might shift, and then he will go from long balls to short balls long, and then he might become a success coach. So he will go with the wind, basically, to win games and to get into this moment. And there, it's the dualism is plays a big part, because it will always try to get you from one pole to the other. And that's the main interesting thing, because I think if you learn from this experience what coaches will go through, so they might have these moments in their career as a younger coach, or in their younger year as a coach, so in the early ages of coaching. And then they might find the interesting, like they might learn from external things like systematics, for example, like La Masia or Red Bull or the Dutch system. They will implement that, but they also learn from this, like from these curves, and find maybe this inner line of, okay, I will implement both here, and I will try to go my way. But then the question is, can you combine the long balls with build-up play from the back? Or is there only, for example, a build-up play implementing long balls, but not long balls itself? So there are we like at really in the base of or in the core of the football. What are we deciding for in the end? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like football on the meta stage, when you can say it like this in English. I think it's way more that to speak about the general nature of the game and not about specific things. I think when we talk about football in daily life, it's a lot about I have to curve my run to press him like this, and we'd play in a 4-4-2 diamond or whatever, but we don't speak about these dynamics and general laws of the game and of the world. And I think if you truly like to understand football, like you said, and try to understand yourself as a coach and find your balance for yourself, like Guardiola does, obviously for him, I think it's hard to get to, or to come to this point and have a clear idea of what you like to see on the pitch. And I think it should be maybe the first step as a coach that you think about these general things. are you more about chaos? Are you more about order on the pitch? Or is it more for you like being in control or giving up the control? Or how do you like to achieve control? You know, I think these are the general things that you should make clear for yourself when you start as a coach. And I think if you are young, like you said, obviously you have the possibility to choose. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's wise to choose early and to be stubborn with this way of playing and thinking. Like you said, with Pep, he was in La Masia and he was a ball boy and a player for this team and got the coach, and he was stubborn with this what he learned from early age. And maybe it's really good because you're all really into this topic and you're really clear about it, and not to shift from one side to the other. But maybe it's again the contrast that makes you strong, and maybe this is your way of thinking of the game, that you are not stubborn in one extremity.
Yeah, I think, for example, when we see the development of Jürgen Klopp, we can see a lot of things, what are like what he learned over the years, and how he brought his idea further and further. So that's a different example than, for example, Guardiola, and also Mourinho, who was at Barcelona, and what did he do after? He did not the opposite, but something not that what Barcelona was. So he went to a small club and then to Porto, and he won trophies with a different style. So he basically used this extremity of La Masia of Barcelona to find the opposite way to deal with it. So basically he studied this idea and said, okay, I will do it different. And that's also a pretty cool idea to change the system. So I think there are very different approaches, but you're right. We as coaches, we need to focus and say, okay, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm standing for right now in this moment. And that might change because life changes, everything changes, and the football changes. Like, for example, the rules are changing with the new build-up rule. You can place your center backs inside the 18-yard box. So you have to take that in account. But on the other hand, what I am standing for right now and what I want to be accountable for, and that's an interesting part for sure.
Yeah. For example, this season in the U19 Bundesliga, we played in a really special style. I think everybody who knows Tim Walter would recognize that we have similarities to his style, and we had not a good start. So we made less points than we expected, or that we like to achieve in the first games. And then we had a crushing defeat in Berlin. And this was something, like I said, also about shame and so on. You were in this moment, at this point, at the decision to think about it and say, okay, we need the contrast. We go to the other side of the playing model, or the game model, or stay stubborn with our approach and how we like to play, and be confident and find our way and be, like I think Jürgen Klopp found his inner middle, and Pep and Jose Mourinho. But in this moment, we decided to stay with our approach and be, just stay with it and try to develop it instead of finding the contrast. And in the long run, it was really powerful that we did that in this moment, because it was a really crushing defeat. And like I said, it balanced itself out. So we won in Leipzig, we won against Hamburg. And I think in this moment in Berlin, I've never experienced that this would be possible, but it was the right decision from us to stay with this approach and be confident about it.
Yeah, you're right. When we put shame into this context of feeling very bad, for example, about a result, whatever you lost there, then shame can be a turning point. And shame can then give you a lot of things to think about yourself and about your team, for example, when you're as a coach. And so shame is a big thing where you can see from both directions on it. So from two directions. So basically you can feel the shame and say like, oh, I'm so bad, that's hurting me so much, I don't feel good. And on the other hand, you can say, okay, oh, this shame is giving me so much things to discover. I can look behind it. I can basically, that's an energy field. If I can open it up, I will get my team better, because it's something, it's only can better from the point of shame, because shame is basically the lowest feeling you can have. It's directly under guilt and fear and everything. Shame is like the thing. You're definitely right. When you're at the point of feeling shame, it's not going deeper. It's not going worse. So basically, shame always is a turning point. But then the question is, okay, what I do out of the turning point? Do I do just a little step to show that everything is right, or do I really turn something around and address things to get it into a new direction, even though it's maybe in the same style of play I played before, but I need to fix things. So I think shame is, on the one hand, one of the things coaches never wants to feel, never wants to experience, but on the other hand, it comes naturally with big defeats or with crazy moments where you feel like that can't be, and then it's the biggest chance for you as a coach.
Yeah, I think so. Would you say that shame can be a useful emotion?
Yeah, as I said, I think there are two sides to look at it. On the one hand, it's like it's holding you back, because it makes you feel very bad about yourself, because basically I define shame as an emotion which is triggered by how I think about what others think about me. So basically, I feel shame when I'm concerned what others think about me. Basically, when I'm a Bundesliga coach, for example, and I feel shame because I'm concerned that I got fired, or that the media is taking me wrong, or the team is turning their back, or whatever happens, that can cause a lot of shame when I'm not appreciated in society. Basically, when we are born into a society, we will always experience shame in our life. So whenever we live with people, shame is always a part, because we are always in this, again, dualism between myself, I, that's me, that's my power, that's me. And on the other hand, this is a group of people I'm living with. Even though you might only live with 20 Indians in South America, you will experience shame. I'm completely convinced of that, because you will have moments where the other guys in your, basically your little club there, like, do not like what you do, or you have to think, okay, what are the rules of this little folk and whatever. So whenever there's society, whenever there are people involved, you will feel shame, because shame is the emotion what others think about you, or the illusion, basically the illusion of yourself and the concerns of yourself about others. So is shame a useful emotion? The shame itself, when we speak about in dualism, can be good and bad. But if we just looking neutral at shame as an emotion, I think it can be useful and can be unuseful. So it's also in the dualism. And I think the useful part is looking behind it, understanding why I feel it, the reasons behind it, to figure out, to speak about it, to go for it and say, okay, I want to discover, I want to grow from it. That's the useful part. And the not useful part is to stay and to let the shame hold you back.
Yeah, interesting. I think maybe this is one of the most important aspects about the football world, that shame is a huge factor of it, isn't it? Because like you said, when you are in the spotlight of professional football, and you know everything you do is, everybody tries to rate it and try to give his opinion about it, about you, about your life, about your coaching style, about what you how you behave beside the pitch or on the pitch if you're a player. And when you are in this kind of environment, I think it's the shame that catalyzes itself, you know, when you see the media talking about you and you always have to question yourself and you are questioned from others. It starts with you, and you try to make or your thoughts, or you get thoughts that that what you do is not good, or what you do is wrong, or how you live is wrong, or who you are is wrong. I think that the footballing world is something that's maybe something that's really, really bad for people who have a problem with their own shame, because it's a tough world.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think shame is associated with weakness. So I think shame, when we look at the role of shame in soccer world, in football world, I think it's the biggest taboo. It's the biggest thing what nobody speaks about in every press conference, even though you will feel the coaches will not good, like they will always say what they are supposed to say. Nobody goes in front of the media and is authentically what he is or who he is. Some might get to a point what is near to themselves, and maybe sometimes they freak. For example, Per Mertesacker with the interview after the Algeria games, maybe sometimes the authentic selves come through, but that are very small amounts and they are captured by media directly. So I think shame is the biggest taboo in the football world. And on the other hand, you're definitely right. When we now listen to players like Andre Schürrle and Per Mertesacker, Per Mertesacker told after his career, he spoke in this Phrasenmäher podcast, that he said he was throwing up before games. He was not feeling good going into the stadium. He was feeling so bad. He was sometimes throwing up several times before a game. He was so, I don't know if fear is the right word, but he was just anxious about the game and everything. Andre Schürrle says after his career now, he could, like, there were less moments where he could really truly be himself, because everybody plays a role to be in this business. So basically, I think the role of shame is so big that individuals can only speak about it afterwards. Look at Thomas Hitzelsberger. Thomas Hitzelsberger is one of the very few football players who said that they're gay, but he said it after his career because he knew he would stay in the business, but he's not anymore that big in the spotlight. Maybe he becomes now again, but he's not that big in the spotlight as before. So shame is a big topic, I think so. And the topic of what others think about me, because the media is so strong and the media can basically destroy your career or help you. And so you always need a balanced relationship to media, to players, to also to the executive, to the board, to the sporting director. So I think shame is the biggest taboo.
Yeah, but I think it's really interesting to think about what you said. Like that's something like a strength, I think it's a strength to tell your players or tell yourself that you're ashamed of something. And I think most people think that, like I said, shame is associated with weakness, but it's not the same. It's not equal with weakness. Just because you're ashamed, you are not weak. I think somebody who is able to be confident about his own shame and shame in the past and current shame is a lot stronger than somebody who tries to put a mask on and just be somebody he's not, And I think also in the footballing world, it would be refreshing and inspiring for the players on and off the pitch if somebody says, hey, it's okay to be ashamed, it's okay to be not good at something, and it's okay maybe if you did something wrong and you feel guilty or you feel ashamed, but you are able to stay here and say, that's me and it's a part of me, and if you like it or not, this is me. Like you decide what other people, you can't decide what other people think of you, but you can decide what you think of yourself. And shame is definitely a part of it. And like I said, nobody on this world will live without shame. And so why should we hide it?
Yeah, I think basically the competitive business makes it difficult for a lot of people to offer or to show their shame, because, for example, this moment when a player comes to you and says, oh, I'm not feeling whatever good, and I have some problems in this phase of the game, or I have some problems in the locker room, and you feel like, oh, that might be a weak player. Is this the best player for the next battle against whatever a good club, you know? So we also have to dissociate weakness and shame, and then you're right, because in this, basically, why do you want to become a football star? A lot of people are driven by getting good publicity or getting big money, and there are few players who really are in love for the game and really just for the game itself, for playing, because the playing is from one stage or some age group, it's not the most important anymore. So then it's more the business character and the whole publicity around it what makes, for example, young players sometimes a bit too early to feel too important, and then they lose their hunger because the playing is not good, interesting anymore, because they are weighted by, for example, a big salary, and they feel they already reached a point. So basically, the football world itself is driven by so many different motivations, and we can only reject shame and say, okay, I deal with, well, not rejecting, I deal with the shame when I don't care about what others say. So, but then I need different motivations, or that different motives than money or publicity or like fame. I would need really true intentions, like I want to be the change in the world I want to be. For example, I would like to see, I want to be an authentic person who stands for his values, and I want to love and play the game. That might be three characters who have this goals or these motivations, who might be players or people who address the topic of shame because they are driven from inside and not by external factors. And then we speak about extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, because I think only players who are intrinsic motivated can deal with shame and can address this topic, because the others are basically driven by shame. They love the money because they are driven by the shame of what others think, because with money they can show that they're good. And so that's a big thing. And I think that's a lot of personal growth and a lot of people we need in this business who are thinking in this way of, what are my values, who am I, and that I want to see myself in this world, and I want to give myself into this world. And on the other hand, football is always a business where you are not self-employed. So when you're self-employed, you can load up your web page, say, okay, that's my 5 values. I offer, for example, coaching, or I offer like something, I fix something, whatever. And you can call me or not, but I can choose what I put in the World Wide Web. But when you are working for a club, you have to look at, okay, what are the values of the club? What is the tradition of the club, the history? What are the values of my chief, of my boss? So I'm in this network, and then who am I? And then do I find myself in this club or not? Maybe that's not the best club for me. Maybe I have to choose another one, but I can't be 100% myself, because I will always rely on the people around me who might be my boss.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So you made a point there. I think it's quite interesting to think about if shame, like you said, that people are sometimes driven by shame. I think it's interesting for me to the thought that maybe the soccer world itself is maybe it brings us forwards, you know. Maybe it brings us forwards that we're driven by shame, because what is in the soccer world, like this incredible amount of money in it, this incredible amount of spectators in the stadiums, and the people on the television, all this powerful stuff. Maybe it just existed because some people were driven by shame, you know. And of course, it's a beautiful game. Like I told in the last podcast, I'm in love with this game as like when I was a small boy, like 4 years old, and there's so much power in this game and so much love and beauty. And maybe it's something that's grown by people who was driven by shame. That's possible. It would be really ironic, wouldn't it be?
I think basically a lot of things are driven by shame. So when I think the energy behind shame is a collective energy. So the interesting thing is you experience it yourself, but then it's basically the collective, like for example, German population, what puts the shame on you, or the media, what makes it feel you. Like, because you're concerned about the opinion of others, it's basically the collective energy, and the collective energy is about to judge. So if the collective energy would change from judging to awareness and listening and not judging, we would have I think, a less shame, like we would have less shame in the world. Because as long as we, and that's maybe what we can change for ourselves, as long as we judge others, as long as we bring out opinion about others and do not accept them how they are, in what stadium they are, whoever they want to be, we will judge others, and then it will come the other way around to us. Because as long as judging is a big part of the society, shame is a big part of the society. So I think when we feel shame and we change the perspective, how would we like to be looked at? Then it would be not non-judgmental, because then we don't have to feel this shame. And I think this collective energy is something what we can change from our individual perspective, and then it will swap over to others. So basically, when we are aware of that, how we feel shame, and when we feel shame, we can change our own behavior to not make others feel these emotions that harsh. But on the other hand, it's their life, so we can't speak for others. We can only make the world better in our eyes, from our perspective.
Would be a shameless world better than our current world? If nobody must shame themselves for anything they do?
I think a shameless world right now is not possible, because we are always living with human beings, and we are always in this balancing between between introvert and extrovert. Like, we have all intro and extroverted parts in ourselves. Some have more extro, some have more intro. So we are always like, at least you have 1% extroverted part, you will experience shame maybe. But you're right. I think in shameless world would be a non-judgmental world. But that's only like, you can't do that in the outside. It's more an inside process. So basically, everybody needs to look inside and look, okay, where does my shame come from? And I think if we releases these emotions and also looks inside, where's my inner judge come from? Where are my belief sentences come from? And then we wire them and put new in place by repetitions, because you cannot just say, oh, now I think different. You have to really practice it every day. You have to choose trust instead of fear every day. Every day you look at your player, you have to choose trust. Always, whenever you speak to the sporting director, you choose trust instead of fear. Every day you have this decision, and I think then you can change yourself, and then the world also will follow through. But I think a shameless world, I think I can't imagine that right now, but maybe it goes into the direction where what you said, that everybody can be truly themselves. Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's again about this dualism, right? It's about shameless world or a non-judgmental world, and the current world, or a judgmental world and a shameful world. And maybe it's not even possible, because there's something like balance tries to achieve or to reach itself again, like being in the middle. And maybe we are able to bring this middle a bit towards one side of the schedule, or of the scala, I don't know. But sometimes maybe it's not just possible to make a shameless world. Like me, for myself, when I think about myself in daily life, I'm sometimes so judgmental. Really, I'm sometimes so judgmental. And when I experience that, I think about it. Wow, would you like to think others think like this about you? Like I'm thinking right now about the other person. And I think it's about reflecting them yourself. But in this moment, I'm so judgmental. And I think in football, we are in every day we are judgmental because we have to judge players by what they do on the pitch. And yeah, I think it's hard to achieve a changeless world then, because maybe on a personal stage it would be possible, and not on the footballing stage. But I think it's hard in this business to be not judgmental, you know?
Yeah, that's why the competition itself brings a lot of shame and judging, for sure. That's a competition itself. But what I think about this, what you said about judging and shame, I think right now, to be honest, the scale is a bit shifted into one extreme. I think it's why we're doing this podcast is I think with this podcast, maybe we can get it a bit more in balance, that it's not a taboo. Like I think right now it's a big taboo. Nobody speaks about it, basically. And so we are in one extreme. I think it's an extreme. It's a big, we are judging a lot and we experience a lot of shame, both. And I think we need to get a bit more into this middle, in this balance again back. Because we got our mindset, like we got gifts from heaven, from God, whatever, how we call it. We got them to live on this earth. So we got a human, einen gesunden Menschenverstand, a healthy, conscious human mind. We got that to survive. So sometimes I need things. For example, when I encountered an animal or just a person, and I trusted first, and then this person just like wanted to kill me, I have to save this information, because the next time I see this person, I should be a bit more conscious. And that's how the whole fear process installed, because then we got this information from this person basically and used it for all our relationships, and then we didn't choose trust and we chose maybe more fear, and then we came more into shame and judging, because we judging is, I think, is a part of self-protection, because we feel frightened of something, for example, of being killed or whatever, and then we judge for, oh, okay, this guy is not nice, I have to be more self-protected. And then hopefully you're not doing that to everybody. But in the other hand, it's giving you a survival mode. So basically it's interesting that we need the survival part to survive and to live in this society and to live with other human living beings, whatever that might be. And on the other hand, if we give it too much power, and if we choose too much fear instead of trust, we will get to the point where, you know, this little monkey video where, like, when, for example, there were, I think, little monkeys who tried to get a banana on the ceiling. I don't know exactly, but then they, like the first generation, they got always a little electricity shock, so they didn't do it. Then the second generation, they wanted to climb for, but then the other generation holds them back and said, don't do it, you get an electricity shock, even though there wasn't electricity anymore. And so nobody of these monkeys ever went to the ceiling. And I feel a bit the same with our society, that there were moments where trust wasn't there anymore, with wars and with our history. And then it always came from generation to generation. Don't trust them, don't trust this, don't trust this. And then you give it from generation to generation. And now I think we are waking up more. We are seeing that there is more, and that we do not have to take the beliefs from the first generation, for example, our parents, and put them in ourselves and say, okay, that's what I think. We have to question, we have to think square, to question everything. And I think that's why we are sitting here.
Yeah, I think this monkey experiment is a really good point about that, because I think it's the essence of what we have in our world. Like racism is caused by that, I think. So there is no racism in kids. there is no racism in babies. Homophobia is this, it's the same with this. It's something that came from generation to generation, and it intensifies in murdering people who are not like the normal. So when you can call it the normal, because I think every kind of hate is like in this monkey experiment. It's brought up from loss of trust in the past, and came from generation to generation. And obviously, I think that's one of the most interesting things about it. Sometimes it intensifies itself. You know, a generation that never experienced something bad with these people hate these people more than a generation who maybe had something like a war back then with a different country or something. And then there is the next generation, and this generation got taught from their parents, this country or this people are not good and we hate them and so on. And sometimes it was like that because of that they hated them more than their parents, and they met the experience. You know, I think the murdering of millions of people in the last century in Europe was caused by that, because I think no one of the Germans ever experienced something bad with a Jew, but they hated them, and nobody knows why, and there is no reason for that. So racism is obviously, I think, a cause of that, and homophobia, or people who don't respect people with disabilities like me, or people of different skin colors, or women, or so on.
What do you think? What is the fuel behind shame?
Yeah, I think that you experience something that you don't like about yourself, and somebody recognized that and is trying to stab you in the back, you know? Like, you are not secure about yourself, you have insecurities from being different, and everybody is different, everybody has insecurities, everybody has personal weaknesses he doesn't like about himself. And then there is a person who sees this and uses it for their purpose to maybe get a higher rank in the social hierarchy, and you lost the trust, and they try to hurt you to climb up in this hierarchy. And I think that's one of the most important fuels of shame inside you. You experience something, and before this happens, you know that you are really insecure about it, and somebody uses it, and then you're down to earth. You don't like to experience it anymore, so you try to hide it into yourself because you're ashamed about it, and don't try to be yourself because you are frightened by showing your insecurities, your weaknesses to the outside, because somebody could use it again against you.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I think about what fuels the shame is, I think one big thing is when we don't look behind the curtain, like when we choose fear instead of trust, when we say, okay, that's my truth, what I got from my parents, for example, and I will stay with it. I can't trust anybody. So when we are not looking behind the curtain of the shame, where it comes from, and why is it there in this moment, when we basically capitulate in front of the shame and say, okay, I can't do anything about it. I will try that it hopefully the next day it's better and I will go from it without really looking at it and seeing the power behind it and the big chances behind it. And the other thing is, I think what you said is, we feel shame always when we listen to others. So basically, I feel a lot of shame. For example, maybe a woman rejected me and said, no, I don't want to go with you on a date. And then I speak to others about what I did, and they say, you have to do it like this or whatever. I think in the end that will your shame is only addressed if you're not speaking about the woman, if you really speak about your feelings. Like if you really say, okay, I feel this and this and this moment, and why do I do that? because maybe I don't have this big self-love or self-esteem about myself. And that's maybe the reason why in the end I do not attract the woman I want to attract, because if my energy is not on this level, it's always here, I might attract this woman and might be rejected by others, whatever. And in the end, I need to switch my look from the outside, from, okay, this woman was crazy. Why did she reject me? What did I do wrong in the outside? To look inside and to look at my belief sentence and to look, okay, this situation, what did it show about myself? And not what did it show about the society? Oh yeah, all women are bad. Or what did it show about this woman? Oh, this woman is bad. What did it show about myself? And that not going into judging, into saying like, oh, I will never find a woman. It's really into, okay, what does it show about myself? What does it feel like? And how can I look behind it? And that's a big process, because you're getting lost into all this other stimulus, into all this other stimuli. Like, it's so easy to focus on the other women. It's so easy to blame the society. It's so easy to blame the restaurant owner. Maybe it's so easy to blame, basically in the end, yeah, yourself, your ego, you are not worth it. And then there comes this point where you really think, okay, what does it show about myself? And that's, I think, the most interesting part. And so I think speaking about it is one first step.
Of course, I think so too. And I think, like you said, with this example, shame and love, there is a connection, I think, between those two emotions. They are maybe the most powerful emotions we can feel. Love in the positive way and shame in the negative way. I think there is not more, like you said, not more on the dark side like shame. And if you think about yourself and you're ashamed of yourself, it's always with a connection to your self-love. You just can be ashamed if you don't love yourself in this moment. And I think there's a so strong connection that it tells you so many things about you and about your emotions and who you truly are when you are ashamed or when you're in love. And maybe we should speak more about shame also in daily situations and ask ourselves why I'm ashamed right now, or why, for example, why I'm going to lie in the moment. You know, when you are in a moment and somebody asks you a question and you're not really telling the truth because you're ashamed of the truth and you can't stand with the truth. And I think when you're in these situations, you should reflect yourself and ask yourself why I'm ashamed right now. Is there a reason? Are the other people the reason, or is it just me? Is it just myself that is ashamed of my what I have done or what I am, or is it just the construct of values in my environment or of the society? And if we are able to do that, I think we could be not just with more empathy in the world in general to our players, to our families, to our friends, but also we can be a bit nicer to ourselves, because, you know, I think most people are really, really harsh to themselves. They love basically they would love their dogs and their cats more than themselves, and they care more about them than about themselves. And if you're in this status because you're so ashamed of yourself and don't love yourself, it's going to be a world that don't love itself. Why do we destroy the world as humanity right now? If you would care about yourself and about your environment like you care for your dog or for your cat, and you like that they survive, that they are healthy and so on, you wouldn't destroy your environment just because you are here. So I think it's one of the most important things when we speak about the environment problem and the climate catastrophe, that shame is the fuel of humanity right now and not love.
Exactly. And that's, I think, what you said is really interesting, because love is also, I think, a taboo. It's like love itself is in Hollywood is given to us in a very butterfly flowerful way of what love not is, basically, and in my truth. And love itself is also a big taboo. Like, this extreme emotions, shame and love, I think, are both a taboo. Both are addressed somehow in Valentine's Day, you know, but that's a superficial addressing of this topic. That's not like we don't have a shame day, for example.
No, no.
But I don't know if that would help, to be honest. I don't know if that would be help. But what I think, for example, when we go into a beginning of a relationship, in the beginning, your shame might be overlaid by these butterflies, by these feelings of, oh yeah, that might be the right person, whatever. And then you experience more and more shame. And then you will stay with the relationship only if you can show vulnerability, if you show your shame, basically what you feel towards your partner, towards the world. Because with every moment we are getting more vulnerable, we are, with speaking out something, we will with labeling our shame, so it will lose the power and the love will increase. So it's basically funny when we look at this point. It's, I think, during a relationship, after this first falling in love period, that the more shame you address, the more incidents happen, the more, for example, you have crazy things what you experience in your partnership what are really heavy. Like, for example, one partner loses a parent or whatever, and you go through it together, you will feel together the shame and you will experience more love. Because I think the more vulnerable you are, the more truly you are yourself, the more you love yourself, the more you can give love to the other person. So I think with every step of vulnerability, with every step of shame we take, the love will increase. And that's maybe also part of the dualism, is that without looking at shame, we can't experience love. So it's basically that as both extremes. We can only love with looking at shame and being vulnerable, because otherwise our illusion of love will maybe give us a life, but not this life what we can have.
Yeah, it's again a beautiful dualism, I think. And maybe to come back to the question, if the shameless world would be something that we should admire or we should force to come to happen, maybe that's the solution, to realize that there is no love without shame and no shame without love. And if we would have a shameless world, maybe it would be also a world without love, because we're not vulnerable, and maybe it would be a world full of invulnerability, and nobody likes to speak about in general their self and so on, because there is no shame.
I think that's a great conclusion, because in the end, why are we on this earth? I think maybe we can experience shameless things when we're whatever. Some people might think we go into a heaven, some people might think whatever, but I think the shameless point is not on this world, to be honest. And you're right, because why we are all here, why we are human beings, what is the sense of our life, what are we, what is the purpose, why we are all here, why are so many humans on this earth? And that's my truth, I do think we are here to experience the duality. We are here to experience these feelings, because these feelings give us information about ourselves. We have the chance on this world to find truly ourselves. I have the chance with everything I do, in the out and in the inside, to find myself and to truly understand who I am, but only because I am in this dualism. I'm in this dual world. And maybe when I'm dead, I'm not anymore in this duality. I don't know. But right now I have a big chance to discover myself. And that's I love this life. So I'm happy about being here and having this chance of discovering myself.
Thought about this a lot, about why are we here. So when you have been born with 1.5 arm, 1.5 arm, you always you're always asking yourself why I'm here and why me. So why always me? And I'm not sure about if there is a God or if there's something, a different force that is bringing us to this planet, or if anything that happens here has a purpose. Maybe it's just a simulation, and one rich guy with a gigantic computer is just simulating us, or we're like in The Sims and somebody is playing us from above. But I I asked myself why I'm here, and for me, I recognized I'm here to make the lives of others better. So I have just one thing that I can decide on my own, and that's how I behave. I can't change everything around me. I can't change the law of physics. I can't change the law of the universe. I can't change what others think of me. I can't change what the world thinks of me. So I'm just able to change what I have done and how I feel. And I'm just my brain and my heart. And when you realize that, you know, you are able to make a change in your environment with your closest friends, with your family, with yourself. And when you have done that, I think you have your purpose in this world, because you grow yourself and you help others to grow. And by helping others to grow, you will be eternal, because they will help others to grow and they will help others to grow. And it's like the racism and the homophobia and the chauvinism that came from generation to generation to generation. But if you make today a difference here, you're also able to make a good change, and this will be in the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And that's really powerful for yourself if you realize that you have a purpose to make the things better.
Yeah, and I think that's also back to dualism. When you help somebody else, you help yourself.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. That's why I love this concept of dualism. It's everywhere. Like life, like you said, life and death. If you die, it's the other hand or the other side of the coin of your life. So we don't know what happens, but again, dualism.
Yeah, you had this great quote in your text, what you sent to me, about when you get up, you open your eyes, you discover the world in the outside, and then in the night when you dream, you close your eyes and go in the inside. So it's both, externally, internally.
Yeah, it's a bit like everything we experience is from the inside, but or it comes from the inside. It's generating in the inside with our brain, with our heart, with our every muscle. We experience basically just our insides. But what we see, what we hear, we too, we're speaking together, we experience it from the outside. So we experience the outside, but always from the inside, you know? It's fascinating.
Okay, Christian, I think we're coming to an end of this episode. Only if you have another question right now. Otherwise, I would think we go in the 1 minute meditation before closing, but feel free to ask another question if you want to.
One question, if we are speaking about existence in general right now, is left. And I think I'd like to speak about it for a short amount of time. Is our existence and our life in general a constant repetition of itself?
Oh, that was a cool question. I'm honest with you. And my answer is pretty clear. Yes, it is, until we change the wisdom. And that's only possible with looking inside. It's only possible with looking behind the curtain of the shame, what's behind it inside of me. So basically, we will always repeat our crises. We will always repeat there's this transactional analysis, they call it games. So you will always play the same games. For example, you're not washing the dishes. The other guy living with you is mad at you, will scream at you, then you will cry, and after that you come together and hug each other. You will always do the same until one of you is aware of this. So basically, until one of you says, okay, I want to change something in this circle or in this drama. So basically, when we change the rhythm, it's only when we look inside and understand ourselves and be aware of ourselves. So be aware of that when I don't clean the dishes, the other guy will be aggressive, or the other guy is aware of, okay, why I do get aggressive when he's done cleaning the dishes. So I think we change the rhythm with looking inside and understanding ourselves.
Beautiful answer.
What is your answer?
I don't know if I have an answer. So the answer is not that clear for me, I think. But I asked this question because I have the feeling that everything that happens in human history repeats itself. Like you said, history is repeating itself. And also our history is repeating itself. Like the traumas from your parents sometimes are the traumas of the kids. Like there are whole nations with a trauma that is maybe 100 years old and it constantly repeats itself. And I think it's so annoying that sometimes the world just seems to repeat itself and again and again and again and again. You know, it seems so senseless.
Oh, it's a really good point, because there's this theory of the drama triangle. You have the guy who's the pursuer, the guy who's like if we have a crime, we have the victim, the guy who's doing the crime, and then we have the saver, the guy who's jumping in and saving the victim, and then himself sometimes become like a crime doer in the end. So you're right. Until we don't look at our collective history, for example, as well, like as a German folk, we have a lot of guilt to carry. Guilt was put on us through concentration camps, through the Second World War, through the First World War with the Versailles Contract. We have a lot of guilt. And we are addressing it every year. Every year we have a Mahnmal, a day for remembrance. We have every year, basically, you feel like you excuse yourself for that we did that, even though we both didn't do it, but some people did it. So basically, there's a lot of guilt on the German folk, and you're definitely right. Until we don't look behind it and really address this topic in ourselves, where do I feel guilt? Even though I was not fighting in the war, but where do I feel guilt? I think then we can, if everybody does that in Germany, for example, everybody's saying, okay, I want to look at my guilt. Where do I feel guilt, and how can I resolve it? How can I deal with it in a better way? I think we could get to a point where we also get rid of this collective guilt. And then not in neglecting something, I'm not speaking about that, but in dealing with it on an eye-level perspective, and not on a perspective, the guilt is putting me down. And I think then we could more, not celebrate, but we could go forward but maybe celebrate is a good word. We could more celebrate the fields behind the guild, what we can do out of it, the big chances, all the things we could do out of it, instead of focusing on the shadow and not seeing the light, basically. And I think that's a big point for the German folk, for sure.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned or afraid of the thought that the repetition always comes again and again and again, you know, because something like this, like the Holocaust in Germany, it always can repeat itself. And like you said, if we are ashamed of it, I think, and you said some people are driven by shame, I think the chances that something terrible like this happens again is higher than if we have like you said, we can see behind this shame and try to be on an eye level and not try to forget it. Because if you're ashamed, your first impulse is to forget that. You want out of the situation. Nobody likes to be ashamed, you know. And I think it's more likely that it happens again if we are ashamed in a way that's toxic and not healthy for both people, for the Jewish people and for us, because it's our greatest, the most important thing is that something like that never happens again. Never, ever. So, and if we are ashamed of it in a toxic way, I think it's more likely that happens.
Yeah, exactly. If we don't deal with the emotion and also not forgive ourselves, basically, because we are still in a society where when you say something wrong, you are directly said, okay, you are a Nazi. And on the other hand, like it's always this thing, even like you're always left or right. It's like there's nothing in between. There's, like we are, maybe we have to strive for this balance, instead of judging, okay, you are a Nazi and you are not, or like, okay, I'm distancing myself completely from this and I'm completely with it. Like, otherwise we wouldn't have the AfD or whatever, you know? So I think that are all results of not dealing with the shame and of not looking at it. And instead, some people are driven by the shame, and some people will go to the side to say, okay, you AfD is bad. Like AfD is not, they are not allowed to do that or not allowed to say that. And then some people would say, okay, I'm for the AfD because they say what they really want to say. And I think both ways might be driven by shame, might be driven by the shame of the past. And so I don't know the solution, and I'm not the guy who prays or preaches something, but I do think if we have this extreme moment of left or right policy, I think we have to think about it, because extremities always are not balanced. It's the same with our Earth. Our Earth is not in balance. We are bankrupting our own Earth. We are destroying our own nature, and that's no balance, and that the Earth will strike back. I think that's normal.
Yeah, we just can hope that we are able to change it. But I think if everybody is able to speak about shame, speak about love, maybe we can.
I think the biggest thing is shame and judging is always often the biggest thing to stop conversation, to stop listening. For example, there's one in the right party and one in the left party, and the one guy thinks, okay, this guy has a bad idea about life, and the other guy thinks, okay, this is a Nazi. So then in the end, they will never listen to each other because they already judged each other in a way of, I don't like this guy. And so basically what we need is, okay, I have an opinion, whatever that is, whatever, you're not getting judged for this opinion, but I'm listening to you and I leave you with your thing. And I don't want to pursue or convince you of anything. If whatever, like my beliefs, maybe I'm Catholic, maybe I'm Buddhist, maybe I'm Muslim, whatever my belief system is, but I don't want you don't have to feel the same. I just have this point, you have this point. And I think if we go into this listening, a lot of fear and shame will be resolved, because then there, without this, like when, then the judging will not take place that much, and then you can encounter each other, and then there might come an immigrant to Germany and you don't judge him or her and just listen to him or her. I think that would be a different approach of dealing with immigrants, and then it would be a different world. But that would be the first step in my point of view, to look at it and to listen first.
Yeah, I think that's a good conclusion for a podcast. To listen.
Yeah. Whoever made it to the end, huh?
Yeah. Obviously.
Okay, I would say we go for 1 minute in silence, and after that we close it. Is that fine for you?
Of course.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Christian, during this minute, there was one question coming up for you. Did you feel shame doing this podcast?
No, not at all. I'm really glad that I can make this, and I'm not ashamed speaking about shame, and I think nobody should, because it's something that makes you strong. I think the lesson of true strength is when you are aware of your own feelings and your own shame, and you are confident about it to tell people it's okay how you are, who you are, and who you like to be. And I think if you are ashamed of speaking about feelings, then life is meaningless.
Thank you, Christian.